you're watching the news from the Sultan of Oman television. First, the headlines. The Ministry of Labour holds joint meetings with the general managers of human resources and various government units to accelerate the process of employing citizen initiatives. The Ministry of Education announces employing 2,733 male and female teachers for the next scholastic year. The Sultanate participates in the 5th virtual extraordinary meeting of the GCC Health Ministers. And the Sultanate records an increase in natural gas production by 7% at the end of last April. Those are the headlines, and now for the news in detail. Implementing the royal directives of His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq to accelerate the process of employing citizens in various sectors, the Ministry of Labour held a joint meeting with the general managers of human resources in various government units. The meeting was aimed at determining a schedule for the appointment of the new applications, or for the national workforce to replace the expatriates, or to activate the temporary work contracts or hourly employment system as per the actual requirements. The meeting stressed that the government units shall be committed to expediting the appointments procedures as per a specified timetable. The Ministry of Labour said financial grades will be provided according to the approved employment plan, and the Ministry will work to follow up the operating procedures in various sectors and announcing the steps of implementing the royal directives on employing the national manpower. The Ministry of Education announced that it is continuing to finalise the employment procedures of 2,733 male and female teachers for the next scholastic year, 2021-2022. They are from graduates of the current academic year who underwent written examinations conducted this year, and also from those who were on the waiting list of previous years. The Ministry said that it followed employment rules and procedures applicable for those jobs. Among those jobs were 369 which came to be expatriate replacements. It added that the names of the new teachers to be employed will be announced before the end of June after completion of applicable administrative procedures. The Ministry pointed out that the number of currently being employed may increase during the upcoming period due to a replacement process in various specializations. His Excellency Dr. Ahmed bin Mohammed As-Saidi leads the Sultanate's delegation to the 5th extraordinary meeting of the GCC Health Ministers held virtually this morning. More details in the following report by Abdullah bin Ahmed Al-Rubai.
The Sultanate, represented by the Minister of Health, participated virtually this morning in the work of the 5th extraordinary meeting of Their Excellencies Health Ministers of the GCC states. His Excellency Dr. Ahmed bin Mohammed As-Saidi, Minister of Health, led the Sultanate delegation in the presence of Their Excellencies Undersecretaries and other officials in the ministry. The meeting reviewed all developments related to the coronavirus COVID-19 and the measures taken in each country, as well as the current situation in the Sultanate in terms of updating the indicators of the current epidemiological situation of the COVID-19, and discuss the latest developments related to the vaccines used against coronavirus, especially the vaccines approved in the technical meetings of the Council, its guidelines, effectiveness, side-effective and preventive measures adopted for the entry of the GCC citizens through various ports in the GCC countries. A presentation on the outputs of the Committee of Their Excellencies GCC Health Undersecretaries and a presentation of the experience of using vaccines in the Kingdom of Bahrain, in addition to reviewing the decisions issued in their previous meetings. At the end of the meeting, a number of important recommendations were released, which also praised the great efforts made by the health care workers, both at the government institutions and private sectors, as well as members of society in the GCC countries who have contributed positively in reducing the effect of this pandemic. They commended the increase in the rate of vaccination among GCC community members and urged them to continue to do so, along with raising awareness of the importance of vaccinations, its safety and its effectiveness, which is the basic way to protect society and beat the pandemic. Enhancing the continuation of information exchange among member states on the pandemic latest developments, viral modifications, precautionary measures, vaccination information, and the extent of the effectiveness with different ages and side effects that are monitored. The importance of continuing follow-up the implementation of precautionary measures, physical distancing, wearing of masks, and frequently washing of hands and isolation of positive cases. Approving the results of the meetings of Their Excellencies GCC Undersecretaries Committee and adopting the Gulf Guide for the users of COVID-19 vaccines and continue to update it periodically to keep pace with further scientific developments. Coordinate with the concerned authorities in each country to approve the existing applications in the GCC countries to facilitate movement between the countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries and work to link these applications by creating an electronic integration layer and exchanging information on immunization. Approval of allocating a budget of 1 million Saudi riyals for each country from the Council's account to conduct a genetic sequence study of COVID-19 samples. Participation in the study is optional for each country, with the importance of emphasizing the privacy of data for each country. It's worth noting that the meeting of Ministers of Health in the GCC countries was preceded by a meeting of Their Excellencies the Undersecretaries of Health Ministries in the GCC countries last Friday, in which His Excellency Dr. Mohammed bin Saif Al Hosni, Undersecretary of the Ministry of Health for Health Affairs, and a number of officials in the ministry participated. Abdullah bin Ahmed Al-Rubai, Sultanate of Oman Television, Muscat.
The Sultanate's total natural gas production plus import increased by 6.9% at the end of last April, as to reach 15,656,000 cubic meters compared to 14,642,000 cubic meters for the same period last year. The figures issued by the National Centre for Statistics and Information pointed out this increase attributed to increased associated gas by 16%, as to reach around 3 million cubic meters, in addition to rise in non-associated gas by 5%, as to exceed 12,700,000 cubic meters, and gas used in oil fields by 20%. The gas quantity used in registered industrial projects witnessed increase by 0.4% at the end of April 2021, as to reach 9,419,000 cubic meters. The Sultanate's oil production exceeded 114,336,000 barrels at the end of the first trimester, compared to 124,100,000 barrels during the same period last year, decreasing by 8% according to figures issued by the National Centre for Statistics and Information. The average daily production during the aforementioned period had increased to around 952,000 barrels. The decrease in production was attributed to decrease in crude oil production by 17.5% compared to last year. China topped the list of the Omani oil importing countries, followed by India and South Korea. Still to come in our news bulletin. In Manhattan, New York, a charming public park with spectacular views and rivers is opened. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman Television. U.S. President Joe Biden's $6 trillion budget proposal offers major new initiatives like child and elder care, subsidy generous tax credits for families and the working poor, and free community college. It also promises politically frighted tax increases on the wealthy and corporations, and would give domestic cabinet departments significantly bigger budget increases than the Pentagon. This year's spending total, fueled by ongoing COVID-19 relief efforts, is actually down from a projection of $7.2 trillion for the budget year ending in September, but it's sharply higher than the pre-pandemic $4.4 trillion tally of 2019 and fueled by promises of government help for crushing childcare, college, healthcare and elder care costs. But the nation's huge defense budget would get minimal increases, angering Republicans whose votes Biden needs. The Philippines has demanded that China withdraw its ships and fishing vessels from a vicinity of the Philippine-occupied island in South China Seas, where the Chinese military has asserted its sovereignty and vowed to unswervingly safeguard the disputed territory. The exchange of protests by the Asian neighbors over the island, internationally called Titu, is the latest flare-up in a long-simmering territorial feud in the strategic waterway that has accelerated in the last 2 months. The Department of Foreign Affairs in Manila said today it has filed a diplomatic protest against the incessant deployment, prolonged presence and illegal activities of Chinese maritime assets and fishing vessels in the vicinity of the Pagasal Islands. The 92-acre island is one of the largest areas, mostly including inslets, reefs and shoals occupied by Philippine forces in the disputed waters. The southern Chinese city of Guangzhou shuts down a neighborhood and orders its residents to stay home today for door-to-door coronavirus testing following an upsurge in infections that has rattled authorities. Guangzhou, a business and industrial center of 15 million people north of Hong Kong, has reported 20 new infections over the past week. The number is small compared with India's thousands of daily cases, but alarmed Chinese authorities who believe they had the disease under control. The city government earlier ordered testing of hundreds of thousands of residents following the initial infections. The government said some 700,000 people had been tested by Wednesday. Most of the latest infections in Guangzhou are believed to be linked to a 75-year-old woman who was found May 21st to have the variant first identified in India. Most of the others attended a dinner with her or lived together. Malaysia will be placed under a total lockdown as daily COVID-19 cases climb to more than 8,000. In the first phase of the lockdown, effective from June 1st to June 14th, all social and economic sectors will not be allowed to operate except for essential economic services. Malaysia has seen a surge in new COVID-19 infections in recent weeks, with a record high of 8,290 reported on Friday, bringing the national total of 549,514. Another 61 deaths were reported, taking the death toll to 2,552. The country's healthcare system is under strain, with 72,823 active cases being treated, of which 808 are in intensive care and 403 of those are in need of assisted breathing. Little Island is its name, but the vision and the budget behind it were colossal. Here is a report.
The public park on the Hudson River finally opened this month, nearly 7 years after plans were unveiled, thanks to billionaire media mogul Barry Diller, whose $260 million donation has further transformed the once derelict west side of Manhattan into a heaven.
It's a 2.5-acre park oasis that has some performance spaces, gathering spaces, and a number of wandering paths for you to explore and get lost, be inspired. Just such a charming little jewel off the edge of Manhattan.
The floating island was built on the pillars of the former Pier 54, connected to Manhattan by a walkway that will take visitors from the trendy meatpacking district to the site where survivors of the Titanic were taken and from where the Lusitania set sail.
We're opening at a really unique time, sort of at the perfect moment, right, as New York is starting to come alive after the pandemic and for the summer. And I think we're really excited to offer a new place for connection with the art and for nature, a new place for respite, for surprise, for delight, and a little bit of whimsy in New Yorkers' lives.
In the days of greater maritime travel, the West Side was a bustling port. Through the decades, it deteriorated into industrial eyesores and homeless camps before a revitalization this century turned it into miles of magnificent parkland.
is fantastic.
And the view is amazing.
The view is amazing. I mean, everybody should come down here. This is so relaxing in the middle of the city. It's so nice. We're from Miami, and I'm more relaxed here than Miami.
This is great. It was a great place to come to visit, to relax, to eat.
Yeah.
Nicknamed Diller Island for its benefactor, is eye candy and a charmer with killer views. The park's 2.7 acres slope up and down, teeming with flora and featuring a 687-seat amphitheater with spectacular vistas of the sunset and river. The Diller Foundation donated $20 million to the nearby High Line, a disused elevated railroad that was converted into a park in Skye. Diller also built his corporate headquarters of Interactive Core near the High Line in a building designed by star architect Frank Gehry.
This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. The Ministry of Labour holds joint meetings with the general managers of human resources and various government units to accelerate the process of employing citizen initiatives. The Ministry of Education announces employing 2,733 male and female teachers for the next scholastic year. The Sultanate participates in the 5th virtual extraordinary meeting of the GCC Health Ministers. And the Sultanate records an increase in natural gas production by 7% at the end of last April. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. We would like to remind you to keep following the precautionary measures of wearing face masks, washing hands, and keeping physical distance from each other. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studio, it's good night and stay safe.